Spoiler for the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but I'm kinda assuming if you're watching me, you've already seen it. But one of the big bombshell reveals of the film was that Vanessa Shelley, the deuteragonist who guides Mike, was the daughter of William Afton. She had been psychologically manipulated since childhood to support and assist Afton in his killings, including becoming a cop as an adult, likely to keep the heat off of him when he started killing adult security guards. It's a really great reveal and pays off a huge portion of the story, that being Mike's suspicion of how Vanessa knows so much about the pizzeria throughout. But a side effect of this movie reveal was how it affected the games. Since Vanessa is a fairly recent addition to the games and we still don't know much about her, she's been one of the characters fans have tried to really figure out. What is her real role in the story? Why her? And for a while, one of the biggest theories surrounding her was that she was an Afton. After all, her last name, while unconfirmed, is known to start with the letter A. But what's the real story here? Is Vanessa in the games actually the daughter of William Afton, or is there something else going on here? Welcome to Mori, FNaF Edition. So let's get this started. I'm going to be taking both sides of this argument, the side where Vanessa is William's daughter, and the side where she's not. Both sides are heavily supported, which I think was intentional for her character. Vanessa is definitely one of the most strange characters to theorize on, given her connection and ulterior identity as Vanny. Vanny is presumably an alternate identity within Vanessa that appears when she's under the control of Glitchtrap, where she essentially becomes a puppet for the yellow rabbit in the form of a white one. As Vanny, it's unclear just how much damage Vanessa and Glitchtrap caused. It's likely that Vanny took upon Afton's old pastime of killing toddlers, but we're never given a clear number, nor any idea of where the bodies wound up. What she's even more likely involved with, however, is the disappearances of several adult staff members, many of whom were close to beating Princess Quest or going into Burntrap's lair, or otherwise getting too close to the actual dark truth hiding beneath the Pizzaplex. But ever since we first heard her voice in Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC, it's been one big question after another. Why her? Why replace the Pizzaplex staff with robots? Why Burntrap? And most of all, who's really in control here? Is it the spirit of William Afton possessing Vanessa, or is it the Mimic 1 program that's merely copying Afton's mannerisms and character? And that may all just tie back into where Vanessa comes from. If Vanessa is an Afton, it may lend more credit to the idea of her being possessed by her own father. If she's not, it makes it more likely that she's being controlled by rogue, obsessive AI. So let's start with the is camp. Let's take a look into what we know about Vanessa from FNaF AR, since we actually first learn a lot about her character from here. Through a series of emails, which we'll call the red flag emails, we find out about a character named Lewis repeatedly emailing an employee at Fazbear named Ness, who was later confirmed to be Vanessa. What we learn about Ness comes primarily from how Lewis talks to her. Lewis is emailing Ness because he works for the IT department and receives red flag notifications when an employee searches for something suspicious from one of their computers. In Ness's case, this involves searches involving torture, inducing compliance in human subjects, cutting people in half, and even an order for 3 lifelike rubber human masks. We also find out towards the end that Ness ends up dyeing her hair with rainbow streaks, something we unfortunately do not see on Vanessa in Security Breach. That would have been the best character design choice, let me tell you. Ultimately, this just ties into Vanessa being possessed, but I figured I should mention it now, otherwise people might call me out for leaving it out. We don't hear much on Vanessa's personal life, but we do know that she was at one point a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience, likely after it switched development studios after Jeremy's death in the virtual world. It's here that Vanessa, for whatever reason, is chosen to be Glitchtrap's thrall and becomes Vanny. In Security Breach, we finally start to learn more about Vanessa's personal life through therapy tapes that can be found in the post-game. These are stored on retro CDs and they cover 2 patients. One is 46 and the other is 71, which is Vanessa. It's through these tapes we learn about Vanessa's home life growing up, and this is what we're going to be honing in on, to actually determine where she comes from. The first big point to bring up is that Vanessa's mother is completely out of the situation. Although it's left ambiguous in-game, it's likely that after Vanessa's father won custody over her as a child, her mother died. It's unclear if she did this herself out of grief, or if there were outside factors involved, but either way it left Vanessa torn up for the rest of her adult life. In the apparent court battle, it's also clarified that Vanessa was coached into lying on her father's behalf in court to try and sway the opinion in his favor, which worked. It's worth stating as well, the therapist really drives in how what happened to Vanessa's mother was not her fault. It was her father named Bill. Bill, which is a common nickname for William. Doing a search, it also seems like it's a nickname for Basil, but I mean, if your name is Basil, why would you ever go by anything else? That name rocks. Anyway, one thing we know for sure about Vanessa's childhood is that it was not a pleasant one. The way she speaks about her father, and the way the therapist speaks about him, makes him sound very clearly like an abusive parent. One thing about Vanessa that is mentioned but not elaborated on is her fear of the dark and basements, preferring the bright blue sky. In fact, a lot of what we know about Vanessa tells us she's definitely the outdoorsy type. When doing the ink blot test with one therapist, she sees a treehouse and a beetle, with the therapist even chiming in by saying she sees a face instead. If I had to guess, this is likely because Vanessa desired escape, or to stay out of the basement and in the sun. But then there's one big moment. One moment where Vanessa's mentions of her father seem to blend with her mentions of Glitchtrap. At this point, every now and then Vanessa would slip a little and either reveal something accidentally or correct and even discipline herself to shut up about what's actually going on with her. The big moment, however, comes when she mentions compartmentalizing her father, or someone else. In either case, the therapist suggests facing her memories head on, but Vanessa says that idea scares her. In this moment, it seems like Vanessa is scared of facing both her father and Glitchtrap, as if they were the same person. What other details are there? Well, how about Vanessa was placed in a very high ranking in the Pizzaplex's general staff, despite not being qualified as a security chief. As we learn, she was placed there by someone at the top, and if her last name really is Afton, then there's a good chance she was placed there because of her family name. Realistically, she would sort of be an heiress to the Fazbear brand. But that's all good. Is there anything more direct we can point to? Sure, her dad is kind of painted to be very similar to William right down to the name, but I'm not fully convinced. So let's start looking at the isn't. The main argument against Vanessa being an Afton comes from what we already know about the Afton family. For those who don't know, generally speaking, we're aware of 4 members of the Afton family. Michael, the oldest son and sort of the main protagonist of the series. Elizabeth, the youngest daughter who is killed by and possesses Circus Baby. The crying child who remains unnamed but was killed at his birthday party by the Fredbear animatronic. And the father of the family, William. The art I'm showing on screen probably also has a mother, but she's not an actual canon FNaF character and is kind of a self-insert by the artist Pinky Pills. Oh boy, there's an entire video that could be made on her. Anyway, the point I'm making is that this family dynamic is pretty consistent throughout the majority of FNAF's story, and we are never introduced to the concept of William having had a second daughter. And if he did, even then the timeline would not make sense. Okay, so let's get something straight here. If we're talking timeline specifically, then there is no way that Vanessa could be William's daughter. Vanessa is in her 20s during Security Breach and presumably FNAF AR. We know that by the time of FNAF AR and likely Help Wanted, Springtrap was a well-known character in universe, given he would actually appear in the delivery service. So what's the problem? Well, assuming that VR and AR were to happen right after FNAF 3, which couldn't happen anyway because we need to leave room for FNAF 6, then Afton never would have had the chance to have Vanessa as a kid. Why? Because we know that for the last 30 years, William has been rotting away in a back room at Freddy's. But okay, maybe that's not true. Maybe Freddy's was closed for like 20 years or something and then William decides to have another kid and go turn into Springtrap. But that can't be true either, since Phone Guy is still alive by the time Springtrap gets sealed into the room.
Hello. This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one. Work crews will be here most of the day today, constructing a false wall over the old door face.
Placing those events before even FNAF 1.
Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. Yeah, I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
So Afton definitely spent at minimum 30 years in that room, possibly even more. In any event, by the time Vanessa would have been born, Afton was probably already locked away for at least 10 years. And as Springtrap, mind you, so unless William was regularly donating, nobody's getting that Afton DNA. But what's the deal then? So much of Vanessa's backstory points to William being her dad, and even now the movie supports this idea. Well, I do have one explanation, and it's one that unfortunately doesn't clear up Glitchtrap, but one that might best explain who Vanessa is and why she was the one to become Vanny. Here's my thoughts. Although we've established William physically could not be Vanessa's father, it's the similarities they do share that made her the perfect choice. Throughout Vanessa's life, she was tormented and manipulated by her father, a man whose name William shared. She was also blonde and green-eyed, which reminded him of his own daughter. She was already mentally weak from years of suppressing memories of her father and how his evil destroyed her mother and was still destroying her. When she was a game tester for Help Wanted, she wasn't there on a mission, she was just doing her job. But that's when Glitchtrap started connecting dots. Her father's name and William's name, the manipulation, the appearances. In many ways, Vanessa had lived an Afton upbringing. She would be easy for Glitchtrap to control, either because he's William's ghost, or because the Mimic's programming wanted a daughter just like Afton. In either case, she survived to carry out Glitchtrap's plans in the real world, while he stayed tucked away in her mind, pulling the strings and starting his new plan. So, in the end, what does this mean? Well, first off, William Afton, you are not the father. But you are very similar to Vanessa's father, intentionally. I think the big tipping point for me is that although Bill is a nickname for William, William's never actually been referred to as Bill in the entire series. He usually just goes by William. So for him to start going by Bill, it seems like a stretch to me. However, if Bill is not William Afton, but instead a character who simply shares his first name, then you have me hooked. William A, being Vanessa A's father, might have just been too good of an opportunity for Glitchtrap to pass up, so instead of killing her like he did with Jeremy, he instead made her into his servant. That, in my opinion, is the best way to cover the timeline discrepancies, to show that although Vanessa's father couldn't actually be William, there is good reason to believe that she was picked because of how similar her father was to William. But there is another option, a more evil one. One that I unfortunately, in the spirit of complete neutrality, have to bring up. There's unfortunately the possibility that Vanessa is not a human being. She could actually be a robot designed by William, and thus would not age past whatever age she was built at. So let's go over the evidence we have for this theory. First off is actually one of the red flag emails I mentioned earlier. In one of them, she specifically noted to be buying 3 lifelike human male rubber masks. This is never brought up again, but it does leave the possibility open that she was buying them either for other robots or herself. Of course, Vanessa is a woman and these masks are supposed to be male, so keep that in mind. Next up, let's reinterpret some of those therapy tapes. As people have pointed out in the past, Vanessa has a fear of dark basements. Combine that with her being blonde, having green eyes, a father named William, and we have a dead ringer for Elizabeth Afton. Or at least a version of her. Baby and Vanessa are even both voiced by the same actress, Heather Masters. This is something that may even be supported in the books, what with the Charlie bots. It's possible that same thing does happen in the game timeline, but not with Charlotte. Instead, it could be happening with Elizabeth. But really, this does not explain everything. I think most of all, this explanation doesn't explain why Glitchtrap needs to control her. If she presumably was made by Afton, wouldn't she just listen to him anyway? Why does she need to be taken over and given a Mr. Hyde to her Dr. Jekyll? To me, this solution, while possible, just seems implausible. Especially since we never see any real evidence in-game of her specifically being a robot. In order to reach that conclusion, we need to reinterpret evidence that was better suited for isolating her lineage. So for me anyway, this option just doesn't seem likely. But now that I've provided evidence justifying it, I can't wait to see it taken out of context on Twitter so someone can say, FNaF theorists are going insane. Like, yes, I'm going insane, but I don't believe Vanessa's a robot. In the end, I think we're honestly still lacking a lot of knowledge about either Vanessa. In the movie, we know only a little about who she is and why she was there for Mike, and in the games we know a lot less. But either way, I'm excited to see what comes next. Help Wanted 2 is supposed to come out this year, so let's just wait and see. Until then, I'm Demuted. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.